pour yourself a cup of coffee. Sit back and let's delve into the roller coaster of life's stories. Today, I want to open my heart about a story, a decision that was perhaps the most insane of my life, but also the one that brought me the most profound peace. The ink was barely dry on my divorce papers, ending a marriage of 10 years that had seemed perfect when I signed another document. It was a deed, donating the entirety of my $15 million mansion, a home built from my own sweat and tears, to a charity for orphaned children. In that moment, before the lawyer could even offer his congratulations, my mother-in-law, Catherine, stormed in like a hurricane. She grabbed my arm, her voice a venomous shriek, spittle flying onto my face. "Are you out of your mind? If you give it away, where will the 12 members of my family live? Do you want us all begging on the streets?" The room fell into a dead silence. Every eye was on me. I wasn't startled. I wasn't afraid. I simply, gently, removed her hand from my arm, looked directly into her eyes, which were bloodshot with fury, and responded with a single sentence, a sentence that struck her dumb, leaving her utterly speechless. "To understand why I did what I did, I have to take you back 1 month, to a day when I still believed I was the happiest woman in the world. It was a beautiful weekend afternoon, with golden sunlight pouring into the vast gardens of the waterfront mansion my husband and I called home. I had spent the entire week personally planning a momentous event, the 40th wedding anniversary party for my in-laws. I wanted it to be more than just a party. It had to be an unforgettable memory, a profound token of my gratitude to the people I had considered my own parents for the past decade. I spared no expense, hiring the finest caterers and having the entire garden decorated with thousands of imported roses. I had a small stage set up with a live band playing the timeless love songs my in-laws adored from their youth. Every detail, from the hand-embroidered silk tablecloths to the vintage wines, was chosen by me. As night fell, my mansion glittered like a palace. The guests were all close friends and business partners of my husband's family. Everyone marveled at the opulence and elegance of the celebration. I stood beside my husband, Michael Prescott, in a pearl-colored evening gown, a smile on my face as we greeted each guest. Michael looked incredibly dapper in his tailored suit. He wrapped his arm around my waist and whispered in my ear, "You've worked so hard, my love. Having you is the greatest blessing for me and this entire family." Hearing his words, my heart swelled with happiness. I leaned my head on his shoulder, feeling all my fatigue melt away. The guests of honor, my in-laws, were visibly beaming. My mother-in-law, Catherine, wore a deep red velvet gown, adorned with the diamond jewelry set I had given her the week before. She moved through the crowd, shaking hands and boasting to everyone about her wonderful daughter-in-law. "This is my daughter-in-law, Eleanor," she would say. "She planned all of this herself. That girl loves us more than her own parents." Hearing those words, even knowing they were partly for show, warmed my heart. I thought that my 10 years of sacrifice, of nurturing this family, had finally been rewarded with recognition and love. The entire Prescott clan was there in full force. Michael's 2 younger brothers with their wives and children, and his youngest sister with her fiancé. All 12 of them lived in a nearby cluster of suburban homes, but they were at our mansion almost daily, treating it as the family's central gathering place. I never minded. In fact, I enjoyed it. I always believed a large house felt cold without the sound of people. I happily held my little nephew, watching the children run and play on the lawn, secretly wishing that one day this house would be filled with the laughter of my own children. Michael and I had been married for 10 years, but we were still childless. It was my deepest sorrow, and a source of constant guilt I felt towards his family. The party's atmosphere couldn't have been more joyous. When it was time to cut the anniversary cake, I had another surprise ready: the keys to a brand new, top-of-the-line Tesla Model S. It was my gift to my father-in-law. He was stunned, then so moved he couldn't speak, only patting my shoulder repeatedly. Catherine hugged me tightly. "Oh, Eleanor, my dear child, how can we ever repay you for this?" In that moment, I believed I had done the right thing, that my sacrifices were entirely worth it. But I could never have imagined that just beyond this peak of happiness, a chasm of deceit was waiting for me. When the party wound down and the guests had departed, leaving only the family, Catherine suddenly signaled for Michael and me to sit down in the living room. She said she had something important to discuss. I thought she wanted to thank me again. But I was wrong. After dismissing the household staff, she looked at me, a smile still on her lips, but her eyes held something strange, a calculating look I had never seen before. "Eleanor," she began, her voice syrupy sweet, "you made your father and me so proud tonight. This family, this entire lineage, owes you a great deal." "It was nothing, Mom. It was my pleasure," I replied humbly. She nodded slowly, then continued. "I know how much you love this family, how much you love Michael. But you see, a man in the business world needs a certain standing. Our Michael is brilliant and handsome. But wherever he goes, people know he lives in a house that's in his wife's name. Sometimes, there's unpleasant gossip, and it affects his career." I began to feel a sense of unease. Michael, sitting beside me, took my hand. His gaze was full of affection. "Ellie, don't overthink it. Mom is just looking out for me," Catherine pressed on, her voice still light as air. "So, I have an idea. It's for the good of you both, for this family. Why don't you transfer the title of this mansion into Michael's name? After all, your husband and wife, the assets are shared. But having it in his name will give him more credibility to pursue bigger ventures. A household with a man as its head brings better fortune. Don't you think so?" Every word she spoke felt like an invisible hammer blow to my head. This mansion wasn't just an asset. It was the culmination of 10 years of my youth, the result of selling the tech company I had built from scratch. It was a symbol of my independence, my hard work. And now, my mother-in-law, for the most absurd of reasons, wanted me to just give it up. The smile on my face froze. I looked at Michael, hoping he would say something, that he would defend me, but he remained silent, his hand still holding mine. His eyes, however, held a look of expectation. A chill ran down my spine. My mother-in-law's smile now seemed so alien and terrifying. If you are curious to know how I answered my mother-in-law and what horrifying schemes lay hidden behind this unreasonable request, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next dramatic installment of this story. The silence that followed Catherine's suggestion was so thick I could hear the buzz of a fly that had strayed into the living room. Her smile was still there, but it no longer held the warmth I had once mistaken it for. It was like a perfect mask hiding a cold calculation. I glanced at my husband, Michael, the man for whom I had dedicated 10 years of my youth to love and build a life with. His hand was still holding mine, but the grip now felt loose and distant. He wasn't looking at me, nor at his mother. His eyes avoided mine, fixed on an orchid arrangement in the corner of the room. His silence in that moment was crueler than any words. It was a tacit agreement, a compromise made without consulting me. I felt a tightness in my chest, as if someone were squeezing my lungs. I tried to take a deep breath, to find my voice, which seemed to have been stolen by the shock. "Mom, I think this is a huge decision. I need some time to think about it," I stammered. Each word, a struggle. Catherine nodded slightly, her smile unwavering. "Of course, dear. I'm just suggesting it. It's for the good of your future together. Take your time. Think it over. There's no rush." She stood up and patted my shoulder, a gesture laden with hidden meaning. "Well, I'm tired. I'm heading up to bed. You two should get some rest as well." She walked gracefully up the grand staircase, as serene as if she had just been discussing the weather, leaving Michael and me alone in the vast living room. The luxurious furniture, the sparkling crystal chandelier I was once so proud of, now felt cold and soulless. Only then did Michael turn to look at me. He forced a smile. "Ellie, don't read too much into it. Mom was just talking. She's always worrying about our future." I pulled my hand from his, a small action that carried an immense weight of disappointment. Michael, do you think the same as your mother? Do you also think I should sign this mansion over to you? I asked, my voice trembling. Michael looked flustered. He ran a hand through his hair, a habit of his when he felt cornered. No, not exactly. But you have to admit, what Mom said makes some sense. I'm the man, the head of the family, being out in the business world. Having a major asset in my name, it gives me more clout. Besides, it's still our house. It's not going anywhere, so what's there to worry about? The head of the family? I almost laughed out loud, a bitter, hollow sound. Michael, for the past 10 years, who has really been the pillar of this family? Don't you know? My company. The money I earned. This house. I built it all. Have you ever had to worry about money for a single day? My words seemed to have wounded his pride. Michael's brow furrowed, his tone turning defensive. Eleanor, why would you say that? I work too. I earn money. I contribute to this family. Don't act like you look down on me just because you make more money. I don't look down on you. I choked back. I just don't understand why, even you, won't stand by my side. Why do you want to take away the one thing that represents all of my hard work? Our argument went nowhere. Michael started raising his voice. He called me selfish, said I didn't think about my husband, that I didn't respect my mother-in-law. He said I had changed, that I was no longer the sweet, gentle girl he had married. Each word was a knife twisting in my heart. I stopped arguing. I realized that in his mind, it was a given that I should sacrifice, that I should give things up for him and his family. I stood up, exhausted. I'm tired. I'm going to bed. I turned and walked away, leaving Michael alone in the living room. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay with my back to Michael, pretending to be sound asleep. But silent tears streamed down my face, soaking my pillow. For the first time in 10 years, I felt utterly alone in my own marriage. I had thought it was just a moment of weakness from my husband, a thoughtless suggestion from my mother-in-law. But I was wrong. In the days that followed, an invisible pressure began to weigh on me from all sides. Catherine no longer mentioned the property transfer directly. Instead, she employed more subtle tactics. At every meal, she would sigh and recount stories about the son of Mrs. A, whose wife signed over her company to him, and how his business soared. Or about Mr. B, who was promoted to director because he owned a large house in his name. Every story was a poisoned dart aimed at me. She didn't just say these things to my face. She called Michael's siblings and other relatives, complaining that her successful daughter-in-law now looked down on her husband's family, that I was stingy and unwilling to let my husband have his name on the property. The rumors began to spread. I started getting probing looks and hearing whispers. Michael grew more distant. The sweet words and warm hugs disappeared. He often came home late, using the excuse of business meetings and client dinners. But I knew it was just a way to avoid talking to me. Occasionally, he would try to persuade me. Come on, Ellie. Just do what Mom wants and keep the peace. Why are you making things so tense? You're upsetting Mom and putting me in a difficult position. Our family is stable, happy. Don't ruin it all over something so small. Something small. To him and his family, it might be a small thing. But to me, it was my entire career, my self-respect, the final boundary of my sacrifices. I began to feel suffocated. The grand mansion I once loved had become a gilded cage, trapping me with pressure and schemes. I realized they didn't just want the mansion. They wanted me to completely surrender my independence, to become a puppet under their control. And the most frightening part was that they seemed to have a much larger plan in motion, a plan for which the arrival of my brothers-in-law was only the beginning. The real nightmare began one weekend morning, about 2 weeks after the anniversary party. I was in my home office, trying to focus on the quarterly financial report, when I heard a commotion at the gate, laughter, talking, and the loud shrieks of children. A moment later, the housekeeper rushed up and knocked on my door. Ma'am, The families of Mr. Prescott's brothers are here. They've brought a lot of luggage. I frowned, a sense of foreboding washing over me. I went downstairs, and the scene before me was stunning. My spacious living room now resembled a chaotic bus terminal. Suitcases, bags, and cardboard boxes were piled high. The two families of my brothers-in-law, a total of 4 adults and 3 children, were lounging comfortably on the sofa, eating fruit and watching TV. My mother-in-law, Catherine, was holding the youngest grandson, laughing cheerfully. Seeing me, she spoke in a casual tone, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "Oh, Eleanor, you're down. Your brothers-in-law have brought the kids to visit their grandparents for a few days. See if you can get the 2 rooms on the 3rd floor ready for them." I stood frozen in place. A few days? Then why so much luggage? And why had no one bothered to tell me? I looked at Michael. He was busy carrying a large suitcase, avoiding my gaze. "Mom, why didn't anyone let me know they were coming?" I tried to choose my words carefully. Catherine cut me off, her tone slightly annoyed. "What are you talking about? This is their house too. Do brothers need an invitation from their sister-in-law to visit their parents?" The second sister-in-law, a woman named Laura with a gentle appearance but sharp eyes, added with a smile, "Don't worry, Ellie. We're just staying for a few weeks. Our house is being renovated, and it's too dusty for the kids. Michael already said it was fine, that we should just come and stay here where it's more comfortable." I turned to Michael. He just gave a difficult nod. I was going to tell you." From that moment on, my life was turned completely upside down. My peaceful mansion became a chaotic marketplace. The sound of children crying, adults arguing, and the TV blasting at full volume filled the house from morning till night. My privacy completely vanished. They would freely enter my office, rummage through my things, and use my computer to let their kids watch cartoons. Once, I found my youngest brother-in-law casually using my limited edition espresso machine to make a cup of instant coffee. When I frowned, he just chuckled. "Hey, it's a fancy machine, right? It can make anything." But the nuisance didn't stop there. The financial burden began to weigh on me. The electricity and water bills skyrocketed. The refrigerator was always empty because their eating habits were voracious. My housekeeper had to work tirelessly from dawn till dusk, constantly complaining to me, "Ma'am, I can't take it anymore." They order me around for everything, from washing their underwear to peeling fruit for the kids. And when they're done eating, they just leave the dirty dishes everywhere. I wasn't much better off. Every evening after a long day at work, instead of resting, I had to go into the kitchen to prepare dinner for nearly 15 people. My sisters-in-law would either use their children as an excuse or sit around on their phones, gossiping. Not one of them offered to help. My mother-in-law considered it my duty. "You're the eldest daughter-in-law, the lady of this house. If you don't take care of things, who will?" I tried talking to Michael. "Honey, I'm really exhausted. I can't live like this anymore. Can you please ask your brothers to find another place to stay?" But all I got in return was a sigh and his irresponsible platitudes. "Come on, Ellie. They're family. They're just staying for a little while. Then they'll leave. Just try to bear with it. Don't put me in a tough spot." Bear with it. I had been bearing it for 10 years. But my endurance only seemed to encourage them to push further. They no longer saw me as the owner of this house. They treated me like a high-end maid, a bottomless ATM. I began to realize that their moving in was no coincidence. It was part of Catherine's plan. She wanted to use them to pressure me, to exhaust me until I broke down and willingly signed over the mansion in exchange for peace. I felt like I was being backed into a corner. My silence and patience were no longer working. And then, something happened. A small incident. But it was the last straw that made me realize if I didn't act, I would lose everything, not just the house, but my self-respect as well. The breaking point came on a Saturday afternoon. After a stressful week at work, all I wanted was a quiet evening to myself. But that was not to be. My second brother-in-law, Kevin, decided to throw a surprise birthday party for his wife right in my living room. He invited nearly 20 of their friends, blasted music, and spread food and drinks all over the place without even asking me. I came home from work to this chaotic scene and just stood, frozen, at the door. Kevin saw me, a beer in his hand, and swaggered over, throwing an arm around my shoulder with undue familiarity. "Hey, Ellie, you're back! Lighten up! It's Laura's birthday. We're partying till dawn." I pushed his arm off, my voice cold. "Who gave you permission to throw a party here? This is my house." Kevin's face faltered for a second, then he smirked, a look of utter contempt on his face. "Your house? That's a laugh. This is Michael's house, my brother's house, and my brother's house is my house. You're just a wife. An outsider. Don't get on your high horse here. An outsider." Those two words struck my heart like a dagger. I looked for Michael. He was standing in a corner, chatting cheerfully with his friends, completely ignoring our exchange. My mother-in-law was on the sofa, happily accepting birthday gifts from her son's friends. No one defended me. In their eyes, I truly was just an outsider whose purpose was to provide the space and money for their entertainment. I didn't say another word. My silence was no longer patience. It was pure contempt. I turned, walked straight upstairs to my room, and slammed the door. The music and laughter from downstairs still echoed, but they no longer hurt me. They only hardened the resolve that was forming inside me. I had endured enough. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in front of my computer and began to review all my bank accounts and investments. I needed to know exactly what I had, and I needed to protect it before it was too late. And then, something caught my eye. The joint savings account between my husband and me, an account we had agreed to use only for major things like investments or emergencies, had a massive withdrawal. Arshuan. The transaction had been made a week ago. The person who made it was Michael Prescott. My heart stopped. $200,000 was no small sum. What had he used it for? Why hadn't he said a word to me? With trembling hands, I opened the transaction history. The money had been transferred to an account in the name of Daniel Prescott. Daniel was the name of his youngest brother, the one who had recently been complaining about wanting to launch a tech startup but lacked the capital. I sat motionless in my chair, feeling as if all my strength had been drained away. So, that was it. While I was struggling to cover the living expenses for his entire extended family, my husband was secretly taking our joint savings, the fruit of my hard work, to give to his brother. What did he take me for? A bottomless treasury? The next morning, I didn't go to work. I sat in the living room, placed the bank statement on the coffee table, and waited silently for Michael. When he came out of the bedroom and saw me with the paper on the table, his expression changed instantly. You know? He stammered. Know what? That you took $200,000 of our money without my permission to give to your brother? Or that you've been disrespecting my trust for years? I asked, my voice frighteningly calm. Michael started to panic. He tried to explain. Ellie, listen to me. Daniel has a great business opportunity. I just loaned it to him. He promised to pay it back with interest. I was going to wait until things were settled before telling you. A loan? Taking it without asking me is called a loan? Michael, that was our money. Money for our future. For our children someday. What right did you have to make that decision on your own? I'm your husband. I'm the man of this house. Don't I have that right? Michael suddenly snapped, perhaps because he had no logical defense. Besides, he's my brother. Are you really going to be so selfish and petty with family? Just then, Catherine came downstairs. She heard our argument and immediately jumped in, siding with her son. What's all this noise so early in the morning? Oh, for heaven's sake, it's just a little money. Michael loaned it to his brother for business, not for gambling. As a daughter-in-law, you need to think of your husband's family. Always so possessive of your money. What a narrow-minded woman. Mom! I screamed. It was the first time in 10 years I had raised my voice to my mother-in-law. Do you have any idea how much money that is? That's my work, my sweat and blood. What right do you people have to treat it like it's nothing? Both Michael and Catherine were stunned by my outburst. but their shock quickly turned to anger. You! You dare raise your voice to me? Catherine pointed a finger at my face. You disrespectful girl! I'll teach you some manners. Enough. I shot up from my seat. There was no fear in my eyes, only disappointment and determination. I have endured enough. From this day forward, I will not tolerate this for one more second. I turned and walked away, leaving the two of them standing there, speechless. The first crack had appeared, and I knew it could never be repaired. My marriage, the family I had worked so hard to build, was on the brink of collapse. My story is perhaps the silent struggle of many women in their own homes. If you believe that sacrifice must be met with respect, and that it's time for women to stand up and protect their own worth, please give this channel a like and subscribe. Your support is invaluable and motivates us to continue sharing powerful and meaningful stories. Thank you sincerely. The overwhelming anger and disappointment gave me a strength I never knew I possessed. I didn't leave. I didn't break down in tears. Instead, I returned to my home office, locked the door, and began to act. I knew that from this moment on, I couldn't trust anyone in this house. I had to protect myself. The first thing I did was call the bank and request a temporary freeze on our joint savings account. From now on, any withdrawal would require signatures from both of us. It was an emergency measure to prevent Michael from further siphoning off our assets. Next, I started my own investigation. I knew that the $200,000 was just the tip of the iceberg. There had to be other things they were hiding from me. I started with what was closest. I recalled all the times Michael came home late, claiming client dinners, the hushed phone calls in the bathroom, the hastily deleted text messages. In the past, I had chosen to trust him, to ignore these suspicious signs. But now, every tiny detail became a clue. I wasn't a professional detective, but I had the intuition of a betrayed woman and the meticulousness of a CEO accustomed to analyzing data. I began to review all of Michael's credit card statements from the past year. The expenses at fancy restaurants, the shopping sprees at luxury boutiques, the trips he claimed were for business, alone. Everything seemed normal, until I noticed a strange pattern. Most of Michael's significant transactions occurred within the same time frame and at nearby locations. It seemed he wasn't traveling alone. I needed more concrete evidence. The opportunity came one night when the whole house was asleep. Michael, exhausted from our argument, had drunk a fair amount and was sleeping soundly. I quietly took his phone, my heart pounding in my chest. It was the first time I had ever invaded my husband's privacy, but I knew I had no other choice. Luckily, the passcode was still our wedding anniversary. A bitter irony, I bypassed the usual text messages and chat apps. I knew he was smart enough to have erased his tracks there. I went to a place few would think to look, the recently deleted photos album in his cloud account, and then, my world shattered once more. A series of photos appeared. Michael and another woman. They were hugging on a beach, laughing in a dimly lit bar, leaning against each other in a luxurious hotel room. I recognized the woman instantly. It was Jessica, his college girlfriend, the one he had told me he had cut all ties with years ago. In one photo, she was wearing a diamond necklace. I recognized it immediately. It was the one I had bought for Michael on his birthday. He had refused it, saying it was too flashy for a man. It turned out he wasn't averse to it. He was just saving it for someone else. Every photo, every happy moment they shared, was like 1,000 needles piercing my heart. The pain of emotional betrayal was even greater than the financial loss. I had been deceived, not in a fleeting moment of weakness, but in a systematic, prolonged, and skillfully concealed affair. With trembling hands, I screenshotted all the photos, emailed them to myself, and then erased every trace of my activity. I placed the phone back where I found it and returned to bed, but sleep was impossible. Pain and fury warred within me, but amidst the turmoil of emotions, a cold, clear thought began to form. I would not confront him. I would not let him know that I knew everything. I would continue to play the part of the naive wife, upset about the money. I would let them remain complacent in their perfect charade. And I would wait for the right moment to expose it all. I didn't have to wait long. Their own overconfidence handed me the opportunity. One night, as I was pretending to be asleep, I heard the bedroom door creak open. It was Michael. He tiptoed out of the room. I followed him silently. He didn't go to his office or downstairs. He went up to the rooftop terrace, where the cell signal was strongest. I hid behind the stairwell door and listened. He was talking to his mother, and what I heard surpassed my worst imaginings. "Mom, I think she's getting suspicious." Michael's voice was laced with worry. "She froze the joint account. She's making a huge deal about the $200K for Daniel." Catherine's voice on the other end was sharp and calculating. "Suspicious of what? Does she have any proof? Just be sweet to her. A few nice words and she'll be wrapped around your finger again. Women fall for that stuff. The most important thing is to get her to sign over the mansion. And fast. Go slow. Don't scare her off." Catherine paused, then delivered the line that made me bite my lip to keep from screaming. "Once she signs it and everything is in our name, you can kick her out for all I care. Then you can bring that Jessica girl home or do whatever you want." I stood frozen in the darkness, my limbs weak, a chill running through me. So, it wasn't just about money. It wasn't just an affair. It was a meticulously planned conspiracy to seize all my assets and then discard me like a used-up object. And the mastermind was none other than my mother-in-law, the woman I had once respected. My tears stopped flowing. The pain had morphed into a cold, sharp hatred. I silently returned to my room. My heart had turned to stone. The lies had been exposed, the conspiracy laid bare. From this moment on, there was no more naive, weak Eleanor. There was only a woman preparing for war, a war to reclaim everything she had lost, and to make those who had trampled on her pay a very, very dear price. The night I overheard their dreadful conspiracy on the rooftop became an unforgettable turning point in my life. It was like a poison that completely killed the love and the last vestiges of trust I had left. But it was also the antidote, waking me completely from the role of the naive wife I had imprisoned myself in for 10 years. I woke up the next morning with no tears, no gut-wrenching sorrow. Instead, there was a strange calm, the calm in the eye of a storm. I looked at the man sleeping soundly beside me, the man who just last night was plotting to throw me out of my own house. And I felt nothing. In my eyes, he was now just an adversary, an opponent I needed to defeat. I knew that to confront an entire family of schemers, I couldn't act alone. I needed a flawless plan, trustworthy allies, and irrefutable evidence. I decided not to cause a scene, not to expose them immediately. That would be a foolish move. I would continue to act. I would play the role of a wife, hurt over money, who was slowly softening to her husband's apologies. I would let them think I was still a pawn in their game, let them lower their guard and reveal more of their weaknesses. The first thing I did was call David Chen, the veteran lawyer who had been with me since my company's early days. He wasn't just a lawyer. He was like an uncle to me, a great friend I deeply respected. I arranged to meet him at a discreet coffee shop and told him the entire story, from the plot to seize the mansion and Michael's affair to their plan to kick me out. David listened in silence for a long time, his face hardening, his eyes filled with anger and sympathy. "I can't believe it. I completely misjudged him," he said, his voice low. "I thought Michael was a decent man. Turns out he and his entire family are a pack of wolves. What should I do now, David?" I asked, my voice wavering slightly. "Stay calm, Ellie." David placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "First and most importantly, we need to protect your assets. Absolutely do not sign any documents related to transferring titles or power of attorney. Second, we need to gather more evidence. The photos you took, the conversation you overheard, they are all valuable. But we need more. I'll have someone follow Michael and his mistress. We need to document their every move, every meeting. I'll also have someone dig deeper into his shady financial activities. And what about his family?" David's eyes narrowed. "With them, You continue the act. Appear tired, broken, but also show that you're slowly coming around. Let them think they're about to succeed. The weaker the prey appears, the more careless the predator becomes. I nodded. David's plan aligned perfectly with my own thoughts. With his support, I felt much more confident. Leaving the coffee shop, I began to execute my plan. I returned home looking haggard, my eyes puffy and red. When Michael saw me, he rushed over, his voice full of concern. Ellie, where have you been all day? Do you know how worried I was? I said nothing, just buried my face in his shoulder and began to cry the tears of a consummate actress. I cried for the betrayal, for the injustice. But he thought I was crying out of weakness, that I needed his protection. Shh. It's okay, Ellie, he said, stroking my back. I was wrong. I shouldn't have hidden the money from you. You can yell at me, blame me, do whatever you want. Just please don't be silent like this. It scares me. I looked up at him, my eyes tear-filled. I'm just so tired. I don't know who to trust anymore. My performance worked. Michael was completely convinced that I was only upset about the $200,000 and knew nothing of the deeper conspiracy. He did his best to console me, making all sorts of promises. He said he would find a way to get the money back from his brother, that he would never hide anything from me again. I just nodded silently, playing the part of a wife whose anger was slowly subsiding. Meanwhile, David's investigative machine was in motion. Just a few days later, he sent me the first report. Michael and Jessica were meeting almost daily. They weren't just dining at fancy places. They were also looking at houses and properties together. It seemed they were already preparing for a new life after seizing my assets. But the biggest shock was yet to come. David had a miniature recording device planted in the Tesla I had gifted my father-in-law. And what it recorded was even more horrifying than the conversation on the rooftop. I heard Michael's voice talking to his father, Mr. Prescott. Dad, I think it's working. Eleanor is starting to soften up. Just a few more days and I can convince her to sign the papers. Mr. Prescott's voice was low and sinister. Good. You need to do it quickly. Your mother is getting anxious. And what about that Jessica girl? Don't let her ruin our big plan. Don't worry, Dad. I've already promised her. As soon as this is done, I'll divorce Eleanor immediately. We'll live in the mansion. I've already used some of Eleanor's money to buy her a condo, so she won't dare cause any trouble. I sat, listening to the recording, my hands and feet ice cold. It wasn't just my mother-in-law. My father-in-law, the man I had always respected for his quiet, dignified demeanor, was also a mastermind. Their entire family, from top to bottom, was a flock of vultures waiting to tear me apart. I turned off the recording, a cold smile forming on my lips. My counterattack now had a new objective. I wouldn't just make Michael pay. I would bring down his entire hypocritical family. While I was secretly gathering evidence and continuing my role as the long-suffering wife, my in-laws and their families continued to live in my mansion like kings and queens. Their presence was not just an annoyance but a constant humiliation. They treated me as if I were invisible, ordering my housekeeper around, using my property freely, and never missing a chance to make snide remarks. Ellie looks so sad lately, my sister-in-law Laura said during dinner, her tone dripping with mockery. Probably worried about Michael's business. I just kept my head down and ate my food in silence. I knew that the closer they thought they were to success, the more arrogant they would become. And that arrogance was their fatal flaw. I decided to exploit this weakness. I needed a shock, an event big enough to expose their true faces before I made my final move. And that opportunity came from a source I least expected. One afternoon at the office, I received a call from an unknown number. Hello, is this Eleanor Vance? The voice on the other end was a young woman's, a bit timid. Yes, this is she. Who is this? My name is Hannah. I used to work at the boutique you shop at. There's something I think you should know. Her voice was urgent. I was surprised but listened patiently. And what Hannah told me next left me stunned. Ma'am, I'm sorry if this bothers you, but I just can't keep quiet about it. Your husband, Michael, he's been seeing the store manager, Jessica. Jessica. That name again, twisting the knife in my wound. Can you tell me more? I managed to keep my voice steady. Yes. They've been seeing each other secretly for a long time. Mr. Prescott comes to the store all the time. Not to buy things for you, but to see her. He's bought her so many expensive designer items, always the latest collections. Everyone at the store knows. Except for you. Hannah hesitated for a moment, then dropped an even bigger bombshell. And ma'am, I think Jessica is pregnant with his child. Lately, she's been getting morning sickness, and her belly is starting to show. We all suspected it. But yesterday, I overheard her talking to a friend. She was bragging that she was about to become the lady of a huge mansion, that Michael had promised to leave his wife and marry her as soon as business was taken care of. My world spun. Pregnant. Leave his wife and marry her. Their plot wasn't just to take my assets. It was a replacement plan. A scheme to install his mistress as the new lady of the house. Officially and legitimately, pain and rage erupted inside me. I thought I had braced myself for the worst, but this truth still shattered me. He hadn't just betrayed me. He was having a child with another woman, and for the past 10 years, he had always told me we didn't need to rush into having kids, that our careers were more important. It was all a lie. Hannah, are you sure? I asked, my voice trembling. I'm 100% sure, ma'am, she affirmed. I even have a few photos of them together at the mall. If you need them, I can send them to you. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you so much. I hung up, my hands shaking. I collapsed into my chair, tears finally breaking free. But I didn't allow myself to cry for long. I wiped my eyes, the pain quickly hardening into a cold resolve. This was it. This was the weapon I needed. A weapon powerful enough to utterly destroy the facade of their entire family. I immediately called David and told him the earth-shattering news. He couldn't hide his anger. That scoundrel. I'll have my team verify this immediately. Less than a day later, David had the results. Hannah was right. Jessica was 4 months pregnant, and according to the information he gathered, Michael had been taking her to a high-end private clinic for her prenatal checkups. All the evidence was there. I knew it was time to act. I wouldn't confront them alone. I would let his entire family, the ones who had enabled his sins, witness the final act of this play. I chose the weekend dinner as my stage, a time when everyone would be present. I deliberately cooked a feast, setting the table beautifully. The family atmosphere seemed cheerful and cozy. They had no idea it would be their last peaceful meal together. In the middle of dinner, as everyone was laughing and talking, I suddenly stood up. A glass of red wine in my hand. I have an announcement to make to the family, I said, my clear voice capturing everyone's attention. They all looked at me with surprise. Catherine smiled, probably thinking I was about to announce the house transfer. Go on, dear. Is it good news? It's wonderful news, I said, smiling at Michael, a smile full of hidden meaning. Our family is about to get a new member. A cheer went through the room. Catherine's face lit up. Really? Are you pregnant? Oh, that's wonderful, wonderful news. Michael was stunned at first. Then his face broke into a look of joy. He probably thought it was a lucky coincidence, that a child would be the perfect way to tie me to him forever. But I was about to douse his hopes with ice water. I shook my head. No, it's not me. It's Jessica, Michael's girlfriend. The dining room plunged into a deathly silence. The smile on Catherine's face froze. My in-laws stared at each other with open mouths. Michael's face went white as a sheet. He shot to his feet. Eleanor, what nonsense are you talking about? Nonsense? I scoffed. I pulled a stack of photos that Hannah had sent from my purse and threw them onto the table. Then what are these? You and Jessica getting cozy at the mall. You taking her for her prenatal appointments. Explain this. I continued, pulling out another piece of paper. And this is the ultrasound report. Fetus at 16 weeks, perfectly healthy. You're going to be a father, my dear husband. Congratulations. Congratulations to our whole family. All hell broke loose. Catherine, trembling, pointed a finger at Michael. You. Is this true? Michael stammered, unable to speak. The sisters-in-law began whispering furiously. The warm family dinner had turned into a courtroom drama. And I, the betrayed wife, was the one playing the role of the judge, delivering the first sentence for their web of lies. For those following Eleanor's story, if you too feel incensed by the deceit and betrayal and admire her strength and decisiveness, show your support by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your small action is a huge encouragement, letting us know that justice and truth are always valued and supported. Thank you very much. The dining room, which just moments before had been filled with laughter, was now shrouded in a heavy, dreadful silence. All eyes were on Michael, who stood frozen in the middle of the room, his face drained of all color. The photos and the ultrasound report lay on the table like an irrefutable indictment. Well, say something. Have you lost your tongue? Catherine was the first to break the silence. She lunged at her son, grabbing the collar of his shirt and shaking him violently. Did you get that girl pregnant? Are you trying to destroy this family? Michael couldn't meet his mother's eyes. He just mumbled, I'm sorry, Mom. Sorry? Catherine shrieked. She then turned to me, her eyes no longer filled with anger, but with panic. Eleanor, my dear, let me explain. Michael was foolish. He was seduced by that girl. Don't believe her. This family only recognizes you as its daughter-in-law. I just gave a faint, ironic smile. My mother-in-law, a shrewd and calculating woman, wasn't worried about my pain. She was only worried that her plan to acquire my assets would fall apart. She was afraid I would be angry enough to file for divorce immediately, and then everything would be lost. I could see the calculation in her eyes. I decided to continue with the play, but with a completely different script, one written by me. I slumped down into my chair, buried my face in my hands, and began to sob. Heartbroken, gut-wrenching sobs. How could you do this to me, Michael? After 10 years, what did I ever do wrong? I gave my all for you, for this family, and this is how you repay me? My performance had an immediate effect. The entire Prescott family, who had been in a state of panic, suddenly became flustered. They had likely prepared for a storm, for me to flip the table. They never expected me to react in the stereotypical way of a betrayed wife, weak, heartbroken, and in need of consolation. Michael, seeing a lifeline, rushed to my side. He knelt down, trying to pry my hands from my face. Ellie, I'm so sorry. I know I was wrong. I have no excuses. I'm a monster. I betrayed you. You can hit me, scream at me. Do whatever you want. Just please, don't leave me. I can't live without you. He wept, the tears of a third-rate actor. He rambled on about how lonely he had been, how much pressure he was under, blaming circumstances, temptation, everything except his own philandering, deceitful nature. Catherine quickly joined in. She sat beside me, wrapping an arm around me, comforting me. My dear, don't cry. I know you're heartbroken. Michael was wrong. And I will teach him a lesson for you. For the sake of your father and me, for this family. Can you find it in your heart to forgive him just this once? He knows he made a mistake. My child. The rest of the family, the brothers and sisters-in-law, also gathered around. One brought me water, another fanned me, others offered empty, cliched words of comfort. They formed a circle around me. A sweet, cloying trap, trying to corner me into granting forgiveness. I continued to cry, but through the gaps in my fingers, I observed each of their faces, each expression. I saw the hypocrisy in Michael's tears, the calculation in Catherine's comforting words, and the collective sigh of relief from the others when they saw me yielding. They thought they had succeeded. They believed that a few sweet words and crocodile tears were enough to pacify me, to make me forget everything so their plan to take my assets could continue. After a sufficiently dramatic display of weeping, I slowly lifted my head, my eyes red and swollen. I looked at Michael, my voice choked and broken. You really mean it? You'll really break up with her? I swear, Michael said, holding up 3 fingers. Tomorrow, first thing, I will meet her and end it. I will never see her again. From now on, you're the only one in my heart. I turned to Catherine. Mom, you won't hate me, will you? Oh, my foolish child. Catherine hugged me tighter. I could never hate you. I love you more than anything. Don't worry. I will always be on your side. The act of forgiveness was performed to perfection. I played the part of a magnanimous wife, willing to overlook her husband's transgressions for the sake of love. The entire family breathed a collective sigh of relief. The tense atmosphere dissipated, replaced by a false sense of joy. The dinner party ended in a bizarre scene, with everyone laughing and raising their glasses again, as if nothing had happened. Only I knew that behind those smiles, their schemes were still churning. That night, Michael was exceptionally attentive. He drew a warm bath for me, massaged my feet. He lay beside me, holding me close, whispering words of love and promises of a future with just the 2 of us. I closed my eyes, pretending to believe him, to have fallen asleep. But in the darkness, my eyes were wide open. I felt a wave of disgust wash over me. This charade was almost unbearable, but I knew I had to continue. Because I had a new, even bolder plan. I didn't just want them to end up with nothing. I wanted them to be utterly ruined. And to do that, I needed one thing: a divorce decree with Michael's signature already on it. I would get it not through confrontation, but through the very false trust he was working so hard to build. He thought he was leading me on. But he had no idea that the lamb he so despised was about to turn into a wolf, ready to bite back. After that tear-filled night of drama, I began a new performance. The role of a wife trying to heal her broken heart. I was no longer cold and distant. I started talking to Michael again, even if it was just polite small talk. I continued to prepare meals and manage the household. But there was a subtle detachment in everything I did. A distant sadness that anyone could see. The Prescott family played their parts well too. Catherine called me every day, sometimes sending over some expensive health tonic, other times reminding Michael to take good care of me. My sisters-in-law also became friendlier, occasionally inviting me to go shopping or to the spa. They were trying to compensate, or rather, trying to lull me into a false sense of security with their fake concern. I knew their goal. They wanted me to quickly forget the affair, so they could get back to their plan of taking the mansion. I decided to give them an opportunity to walk right into my trap. A week later, I initiated a conversation with Michael. "Honey," I began, my voice hesitant. "I've been thinking a lot. What happened, and I don't want to dwell on it, but there's still a knot in my heart. A fear I can't shake." Michael immediately took my hand. "Tell me, Ellie. I'll do anything to make you feel secure." "I'm scared," I said, looking directly into his eyes, my own welling up with tears. "I'm scared that one day, you'll change your mind again. I'm scared she and the baby will show up and destroy our family. I can't live with that kind of uncertainty." "That won't happen, Ellie," Michael insisted. "I swore to you. What good are vows?" I shook my head. "I need a guarantee. A solid guarantee. In black and white. I want us to get a divorce." "Well, I want us to get a divorce." Michael froze, his face a mask of horror. A divorce? Ellie, why would you say that? Didn't you agree to forgive me?" "I did. I forgive you," I said, my voice calm and clear. "But I can't forgive the insecurity in my own heart. We'll get divorced on paper. Legally, we'll no longer be husband and wife. You'll be completely free, but we won't announce it. We'll continue to live together. to be a family in front of everyone. You'll still be my husband, the future father of our children. We'll draw up an agreement. I'll give you a fair share of the assets so you can do business freely, without the stigma of relying on your wife. In return, you have to promise me you'll never see her again. If I ever find out you're still sneaking around, then we will be truly finished, and you won't get another penny from me. My proposal was a masterstroke. It hit every single thing Michael and his family desired. First, a quiet divorce would legally sever his ties to me, paving the way for his future plans. Second, receiving a large portion of the assets without a messy fight would feel like a windfall. Third, continuing to live together and play the part of a married couple would allow him to maintain his public image as a successful family man. And most importantly, it would make him think I was still in love with him, still naive enough to believe a piece of paper could tie a man down. Michael was stunned by my offer. He couldn't believe I would come up with such a perfect solution. He looked at me, his eyes searching for a trick, a hidden agenda. "Ellie, are you serious? You really think this is the way?" "I don't see any other way," I replied, my voice full of weariness and resignation. "I just want some kind of guarantee, however fragile. If you don't agree, I won't force you. We'll continue to live like this, but I'll never be able to trust you again. And I'll never even consider transferring any assets into your name." My final sentence was the decisive blow. It struck directly at his ultimate goal. He knew that if he didn't agree to this plan, his dream of owning the mansion was over. After a moment of internal conflict, Michael nodded. "All right. If this will give you peace of mind, I'll do it your way." Everything happened incredibly fast after that. Michael and I went to David Chen's law office. Of course, I had met with David secretly beforehand to discuss the terms in detail. In front of Michael, David played the part of an impartial lawyer, merely offering advice based on our mutual agreement. The divorce agreement was drafted. According to its terms, I would give Michael a luxury high-rise condominium valued at $2 million and a cash settlement of $3 million. In return, Michael would waive all rights to the mansion and any other assets registered in my name. He also had to sign a legally binding commitment to have no further contact with Jessica. The divorce and the settlement were signed quickly. The court date was attended only by me, Michael, and our lawyers. The proceedings were quiet and swift. When the judge declared us no longer husband and wife, I saw a flash of triumph in Michael's eyes. He thought he had won. He had effortlessly secured $5 million and his legal freedom, all while continuing to live in my mansion. He had no idea that the divorce decree he had just signed was not a passport to freedom, but the final judgment on his entire conspiracy. Legally, I was completely free. The mansion and all my assets were absolutely protected. I continued my performance flawlessly. I acted sad after the divorce, but gradually seemed to cheer up, putting my faith in Michael's remorse. My in-laws were overjoyed. They thought their prey was securely in the trap, just waiting for them to close the net. Catherine began dropping hints again about the house transfer. Michael also broached the subject, saying, "Now that we have a clear agreement, you should show your good faith too. Signing the mansion over to me would be a great way to affirm our new future together." I just smiled and nodded. Let me think about it for a bit. I knew the time had come to make my final, decisive move, a move that would bring them all crashing down. After finalizing the secret divorce, I held the ultimate legal shield. From that point on, every action was a carefully calculated move on the chessboard I had set. The Prescott family, wallowing in their smug satisfaction, had no idea they were dancing on the edge of a cliff. They relentlessly pressured me to make good on my promise to sign over the mansion, their greed and impatience pushing them ever closer to the final trap. I knew I couldn't sustain the charade forever. I needed a pretext, an event grand and plausible enough to stage my spectacular reversal. The idea came to me one morning, as I was reading the newspaper, a small article in the business section about the Hope and Horizons Children's Trust, a reputable nonprofit dedicated to building homes and schools for orphans, caught my eye. The image of the children, with their innocent eyes full of a longing for love, touched my heart. It suddenly struck me. My vast mansion, a place currently housing people filled with calculation and selfishness, would be infinitely more meaningful if it became a true home for those vulnerable souls. A bold, perhaps even insane, plan began to form in my mind. I wouldn't sell the house, nor would I keep it for myself. I would donate it. I would turn the very thing they coveted most into a torch that would incinerate their entire conspiracy and their hypocritical facade. I immediately contacted my lawyer, David, and laid out my intention. At first, he was stunned by my decision, but after I explained my reasoning, he gave me his full support. Ellie, this is a brilliant move. It not only protects your assets but elevates you to an entirely different moral high ground. I will help you complete all the paperwork as quickly and discreetly as possible. I began working with the Hope and Horizons Trust. I met with the foundation's director, an elderly woman with a kind heart and great vision. When she heard my plan, she was deeply moved. Eleanor, your gesture is truly noble. Your mansion, with its location and beautiful space, will become a model home, a place of shelter and nourishment for hundreds of unfortunate children. On their behalf, I offer you my most sincere gratitude. The legal procedures were handled with meticulous care. The donation contract was drafted with strict clauses, ensuring the property would be used for its intended purpose and could never be sold or used for commercial gain. I requested that everything remain an absolute secret until the official announcement. Meanwhile, at home, I began dropping hints. I acted increasingly swayed by the urgings of Michael and his mother. I told them I had thought it over and that I agreed to transfer the title. But, I said, I wanted to do it in a very special way. I want to throw a huge party here at the house, I told Michael. My face a mask of dreamy sentimentality. I want to invite all our relatives and close friends to witness it. I want to use this opportunity to officially announce my decision. To show everyone that we've weathered the storm and our family is happy again. I also want it to be my apology to your mother for all the stress I've caused her lately. Michael was ecstatic. Without a shred of doubt, he thought it was a fantastic idea. My wife is the best! That's a brilliant idea. It's classy, and it will solidify our family's status. Everyone will be so impressed. The Prescott family was overjoyed when they heard the news. They immediately drew up a ridiculously long guest list, filled with people they wanted to show off to, people before whom they wanted to establish their newfound prominence. Catherine even specifically instructed me to invite a few friendly journalists to cover the happy family event. I smiled and agreed to everything. Don't worry, Mom. I'll handle all the arrangements. They had no idea that the journalists I planned to invite were far more numerous and prestigious than they could ever imagine. I had secretly contacted the biggest newspapers and most reputable television networks, not through personal connections, but through the Hope and Horizons Trust. I fed them an exclusive tip. A successful female entrepreneur was about to make a historic philanthropic gesture donating her $15 million mansion to build a home for orphans. Details would be revealed at a private party. The bait was cast, and the media bit hard. Everything was set. The board was arranged, the pieces in position. The final party, the grand finale for the Prescott family's farce, was about to begin. They were eagerly anticipating a night of glory, a coronation ceremony for their greed. They didn't know it was actually a party of judgment, a public trial where I was the presiding judge, and the sentence for them would be the utter collapse of their honor and everything they had built on a foundation of lies. A bold decision. A move no one saw coming. Will Eleanor's plan go off without a hitch? How dramatic will the final act be? If you are on the edge of your seat, waiting for the greedy and hypocritical to get their just desserts, hit the like and subscribe buttons right now. Your support is the strongest affirmation of justice and righteousness. Don't wait, follow us to the very end. On the day of the party, my mansion was decorated more lavishly than ever before. Thousands of fairy lights were strung throughout the garden, transforming it into a magical landscape. A large stage was erected in the center, with a giant LED screen behind it, ready for the momentous occasion. The Prescott family was a flurry of activity from early morning. They donned their most expensive clothes, their faces beaming with undisguised joy and triumph. Catherine strode around, directing the staff on every minor detail, a constant smile on her face, acting as if she were the true hostess of the event. That vase should be in the center of the table. It looks more elegant. These glasses need another polish. My guests are all important people. We can't have them finding fault. Michael was constantly on the phone, confirming guests. His voice filled with a newfound confidence and authority. Hey, Bill, you're coming tonight, right? Make sure you're here early. Big news. Yeah, you got it. The thing I told you about? Tonight, it's a done deal. He spoke openly, no longer bothering with subterfuge. He believed victory was firmly in his grasp. His brothers were huddled in a corner, excitedly discussing how, after I signed over the house, they would ask Michael for a large sum of money for investments and new cars. They were already mapping out a beautiful future built on my assets. I observed it all, feeling a strange sense of calm. I wore a simple but elegant white dress, with minimal makeup. I didn't want to be the center of attention. Tonight, the spotlight belonged not to me, but to them, the lead actors in the tragicomedy of their own lives. As guests began to arrive, the atmosphere grew more festive. As I had predicted, the Prescotts had invited numerous influential figures from the business world and distant relatives I had never met. They wanted as many witnesses as possible for their triumph. Catherine and her husband stood at the entrance, greeting everyone warmly, introducing Michael with a proud voice. This is our eldest son, Michael. He'll be taking on many great responsibilities for the family soon. Michael puffed out his chest, smiling as he accepted their congratulations. His eyes would occasionally flick towards me, a look that was both a command and a condescension. I simply stood quietly in a corner, smiling and greeting familiar guests, playing the part of the dutiful wife supporting her husband. No one sensed the powerful undercurrent flowing beneath the tranquil surface. Amidst the stream of elegantly dressed guests, a group of more modestly attired people entered quietly and chose a discreet table in the back. They were the journalists and reporters I had invited. They carried no bulky cameras, only small digital ones and their phones. They came as friends of the family, blending into the crowd, observing silently, waiting. The Prescotts, lost in their own performance, didn't notice their presence at all. Then, a special guest arrived, causing a slight pause at the entrance. It was Mrs. Davis, the director of the Hope and Horizons Trust. She was accompanied by a few colleagues, also dressed simply. Catherine frowned slightly, probably not remembering having invited these guests. I quickly walked over, smiling warmly. Mrs. Davis, thank you so much for coming. Eleanor. Mrs. Davis took my hand and squeezed it gently. An event as meaningful as this? We wouldn't miss it for the world. I introduced her to my mother-in-law. Mom, this is Mrs. Davis, a very special friend of mine. Catherine just gave a polite nod before turning away to greet more important guests. She had no idea that the plainly dressed woman she had just dismissed would be the one to deliver the decisive blow to her arrogance. The party officially began. After some musical performances and empty toasts, Michael took the stage. He grasped the microphone, the spotlight making him look radiant and powerful. He cleared his throat and smiled at the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed family and friends, first and foremost, on behalf of my family, I want to extend our sincerest thanks to all of you for being here tonight to celebrate with us. He delivered a smooth, well-rehearsed speech about family values, filial piety, and the importance of a man's role as the pillar of the family. And tonight, he emphasized, his voice becoming solemn, in this warm and wonderful atmosphere, our family has a very important announcement to make, a decision that will mark a new chapter, a new future for our entire family. And the person who will make this announcement is none other than my beloved wife, Eleanor Vance. All eyes turned to me. A wave of applause rippled through the guests. The Prescott family looked at me with encouraging, expectant eyes. They were waiting for me to say the words they had longed to hear. I took a deep breath, smiled, and rose from my seat. I walked gracefully onto the stage. The lights were bright, but I didn't feel blinded. I felt an extraordinary sense of calm. This was it, the final act. I looked down at Michael, at his entire family, their faces glowing with triumph. They had no idea that in just a few short minutes, all those smiles would curdle into horror. I stood on the stage, bathed in brilliant light, with hundreds of eyes fixed on me. I didn't look at any script. I simply smiled, a genuine, bright smile, and took the microphone. Hello, everyone. Hello, Mom and Dad, my dear family, and my husband, Michael. My voice was clear and carried throughout the venue. Tonight, I am truly happy to be standing here. In the very home I poured my heart into building, and to be sharing the most important decision of my life. I saw Michael and his mother nod in satisfaction from their table. They thought I was following their script perfectly. Ladies and gentlemen, I continued, my voice taking on a slightly emotional, perfectly acted quaver. For the past 10 years, I have always believed that a person's most valuable asset isn't money or property, but a happy family and a heart that knows how to love and share. I have always tried to live by that principle. I let my gaze sweep over my in-laws, my eyes full of affection. I am so fortunate to have a husband who has always loved me and a family that has always protected and cherished me. They have taught me so much, especially the value of giving. By now, I could see Catherine dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. She was probably playing the part of the moved mother-in-law, and tonight, I want to perform the greatest act of giving of my life. I want to spread my love further, to those who truly need it. I paused, letting the crowd's curiosity build to its peak. Then, I turned towards the giant LED screen behind me. If you would all please turn your attention to the screen. The screen lit up, but the image that appeared was not a property deed transfer. It was a professionally produced short video. It opened with images of orphaned children in rundown, inadequate facilities, their innocent eyes looking out at the camera. A sad, melodic piano piece began to play. The entire venue fell silent. My in-laws started to look confused. They didn't understand what was happening. These children... My voice came through the speakers, blending with the music. They have no fathers, no mothers, no real homes to return to. Their dreams are sometimes as simple as a full meal, a warm bed. The video continued, showing the work of the Hope and Horizons Trust, charity classes, meal programs, loving volunteers. But out there are still so many golden hearts, people who work tirelessly and silently to bring hope to these unfortunate lives, and I am so very lucky to have gotten to know them. I turned back to face the audience directly. Ladies and gentlemen, the important decision I wish to announce tonight is... I paused again, looking straight into Michael's eyes, into Catherine's eyes. Their faces were shifting from confusion to utter disbelief. I, Eleanor Vance, have decided to donate this entire mansion, valued at $15 million, to the Hope and Horizons Children's Trust, to build a new home and school to be named the Horizon House for Orphaned Children. My words detonated in the room like a bomb. For a few seconds, there was absolute silence, which then erupted into a cacophony of shocked whispers. What? $15 million? Is she insane? My God, what is going on? I didn't let the chaos last. I gave a signal. And from the audience, Mrs. Davis, the director of the trust, and her colleagues walked calmly onto the stage. And to formalize this decision, I am honored to introduce Mrs. Davis, the director of the Hope and Horizons Trust. Tonight, before all of you as witnesses, we will conduct the official signing ceremony. Mrs. Davis took the microphone from me, her voice warm and dignified. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the hundreds of children in our care, I have no words to express our profound gratitude for the golden heart of Miss Eleanor Vance. This is a priceless gift. an act that will change the lives of so many children. A large, ceremonial contract was brought out. Mrs. Davis and I took pens and signed our names. The flashes from the reporters' cameras exploded in a continuous volley, capturing the historic moment. The applause started, hesitant at first, but then grew louder, more enthusiastic. The guests were applauding my noble act, but I knew there was one group that was not clapping. My in-laws. They stood like stone statues. Catherine's mouth was agape, her eyes wide with disbelief. Mr. Prescott was ashen, gripping the back of a chair to keep from collapsing. The younger siblings looked at each other, their expressions shifting from shock to pure rage. And Michael, my husband. He was standing on the stage, just a few feet from me, his face a ghostly white. The triumphant smile was gone, replaced by an unconcealable panic and defeat. He looked at me, his mouth moving as if to say something, but no words came out. The final act had been executed to perfection. I had turned their party of greed into a nationally lauded philanthropic event. I had taken away the very thing they craved most, not to keep for myself, but to give to those who deserved it more. This blow didn't just leave them financially empty-handed. It utterly destroyed the facade of respectability they had worked so hard to build. The signing ceremony concluded amidst thunderous applause and the relentless flashing of cameras. The journalists swarmed around Mrs. Davis and me like bees. A barrage of questions flew not only about the value of the mansion and the plans for the children's home, but also about the deeper reasons behind my sudden decision. I answered calmly and deliberately, choosing each word with care. I spoke of my father's legacy, a man who always taught me about social responsibility. I spoke of my dream, to see children's laughter fill a space that was too large and quiet for one person. I skillfully wove my personal story into a universal message of humanity and inspiration, without ever once directly mentioning the betrayal of my husband's family. I knew my silence regarding their crimes was now the most brutal punishment of all. I would let public opinion, let the very guests they had invited, be their judge. Gradually, the guests began to leave. Almost every person stopped to shake my hand, their eyes filled not just with admiration for a grand gesture, but with sympathy and respect. Eleanor, we truly admire your strength. What an incredible decision. You've taught many of us a lesson tonight. I knew my former in-laws, huddled in a corner, heard every word. They, who had expected a night of glory, were now forced to stand there, lost and insignificant, becoming minor characters in the drama they had directed. The spotlight they craved was now shining brilliantly on the very person they had sought to crush. When the last guest had departed and the final journalist had packed up, the opulent mansion fell into a terrifying silence. All that remained were me, my mother who had arrived discreetly, my lawyer David, and the entire Prescott family, all 12 of them. They were clustered in a corner like a pack of cornered animals, their eyes glaring at me with a mixture of hatred and panic. The silence was shattered by a piercing, unhinged scream. "Eleanor Vance! Are you insane?" Catherine, after moments of stunned disbelief, could no longer contain her true nature. She charged towards me like a moth to a flame, her beautifully made-up face twisted into a grotesque mask of fury. "What is this game you're playing? Who gave you permission to do this? Who gave you the right to give away this house? This is my son's house. It's the future of my entire family." She raised her hand, her long, red-painted fingernails and diamond rings flashing, aiming to strike me. But my mother, who had been standing silently by my side, was quicker. She caught Catherine's wrist. My mother's grip wasn't overly forceful, but it was firm and unyielding, stopping Catherine in her tracks. "Catherine." My mother's voice was ice, devoid of emotion. "You should calm down. Have you forgotten? This house, from the first brick to the last blade of grass, is registered in my daughter's name. Eleanor has the full and sole right to decide what to do with her property." "Her property?" Catherine shrieked, trying futilely to wrench her hand free. "She's my daughter-in-law, the wife of my son. A wife's property belongs to her husband's family." "It was you. You were behind this, weren't you? You put her up to this, you venomous, scheming woman." She turned to glare at my mother. No one had to put me up to anything, I said, stepping out from behind my mother to face Catherine directly. My eyes held no fear or submission, only a chilling calm. This was my decision alone, and I don't believe I need anyone's permission, especially not from people who only ever saw me as a tool. You, Catherine, was choked with rage. She trembled, pointing a finger at my face. You give this house away? Then what about the 12 of us? Your husband's 2 brothers and their families? His parents? We all live here. Do you want my entire family thrown out onto the street for the world to laugh at? There it was. The line I had been waiting for. The sentence that exposed all her selfishness, greed, and shameless entitlement. Even now, she felt not a shred of remorse. She still considered her family's parasitic existence on my property to be her God-given right. I looked at her, a faint, almost invisible smile on my lips. I slowly took a folded set of documents from my clutch. I deliberately unfolded it and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Ma'am, perhaps you were too busy planning your family's grand future to notice a small detail. I held the paper up in front of her face, my voice clear and precise. This is the marriage certificate for Michael and me. But as you can see, right between our names, there is a large official red stamp, and on it are 2 words that are impossible to misread. Divorce decreed. Catherine froze. She snatched the paper from my hand, her eyes bulging as she read it over and over, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Divorced? When did you 2 get divorced? Why? Why didn't I know? To be precise, ma'am, 3 weeks ago, I said, my voice unnervingly serene. Legally speaking, your precious son and I are no longer husband and wife. I am no longer your daughter-in-law. I am no longer the sister-in-law to your children. I am just an outsider. An outsider whom you inadvertently invited to a party in her own former home. Then I turned to Michael, who had been standing like a wax figure, drained of all color. Isn't that right, my dear ex-husband? One shock after another. A dead silence fell over the room. The entire family was completely broken. They couldn't believe that while they were so engrossed in their performance, so sure of their imminent victory, I had quietly and decisively checkmated them with a move they never saw coming. So what? Mr. Prescott, my former father-in-law, finally spoke after a long, stunned silence, his voice hoarse as he clung to his last thread of argument. Even if you are divorced, this house was acquired during the marriage. It's still marital property. You have no right to dispose of it on your own. You are absolutely correct, said David, my lawyer, who had been observing everything quietly. He stepped forward and placed his briefcase on a table. Under the law, it would be considered marital property. However, prior to the divorce, both parties signed a legally binding and notarized postnuptial asset division agreement. David produced another, thicker document and handed it to Mr. Prescott. According to this agreement, Mr. Michael Prescott willingly accepted a luxury condominium in the city, valued at $2 million, and a cash settlement of $3 million. In return, Mr. Prescott agreed to waive any and all rights and claims to this mansion and all other assets registered in Miss Eleanor Vance's name. He signed this document in a clear state of mind and of his own free will. What? $5 million? Catherine screamed. This time, she didn't look at me. She whipped around to face Michael, her eyes looking like they wanted to devour him whole. You already took the money? You dared to hide something this huge from your mother and me? Michael could only hang his head, his body trembling as he stammered. I was going to tell you. Later. You were going to use that money to build a new future with Jessica, weren't you? I finished the sentence for him, my voice as cold as ice. I didn't need to play the audio recordings anymore. One look at his father's devastated face was enough. The entire conspiracy, all the lies, had been laid bare. They had nothing left to say. The truth was a 1-2 punch, delivered straight to the jaw of their greed and arrogance. I looked at Catherine, the powerful matriarch who was used to manipulating everyone, now slumped on the floor, her eyes empty and vacant. I walked over to her. bent down, and spoke in a voice just loud enough for her and those closest to hear, but sharp enough to be etched in their minds forever. Ma'am, where the 12 members of your family will live is a matter for your son to figure out, the son you spoiled and raised. It is not the responsibility of an outsider like me. As of today, this house, which you all considered your own, will belong to children who need it far more than you do. And that is my final answer. Catherine looked up at me. Her eyes no longer held anger or arrogance, only complete and utter defeat and an endless, hollow void. The curtain had truly fallen. That night, after my mother, my lawyer, and I left, the magnificent mansion sank into a deathly silence, one that signaled a total collapse. The Prescott family, from the pinnacle of their smug self-assurance, had plunged headfirst into the abyss of disgrace and failure. The news of the $15 million charity gala, along with the scandal behind it, the secret divorce, the plot to seize assets, became an uncontrollable media firestorm. It wasn't just a sensationalist headline. It became a case study analyzed on mainstream news channels, a prime example of moral decay among a certain class of the wealthy. My public image, which they had tried to tarnish as that of a greedy woman who abandoned her husband, did a complete 180. With irrefutable proof, the public saw the full picture. I became a symbol of a modern woman, intelligent, resilient, decisive, and with a benevolent heart. The image of me on stage, calmly exposing their deceit and then donating my fortune, inspired millions. Conversely, my ex-husband's family became a national laughingstock, the living embodiment of greed, hypocrisy, and betrayal. Their past was dredged up, Mr. Prescott's shady business dealings, Catherine's reputation for cutting corners. They lost not only their standing among friends and business partners, but were also condemned and ostracized by society at large. Catherine suffered a hypertensive crisis from the shock and was rushed to the hospital. But the tragedy didn't end there. Lying in her hospital bed, she was abandoned by her children. Her 2 younger sons, upon realizing the family's gold mine had run dry and the free ride in the mansion was over, quickly packed their bags and left with their families that very night. Cutting off all contact, they feared being associated with the scandal. They left their parents in the ashes of their ruined lives without a single goodbye. The family bonds they so loudly preached, it turned out, were built solely on a foundation of money. When the money was gone, so was the love. The youngest sister, on the verge of her dream wedding, suffered a similar fate. Her fiancé's family, after learning the truth about the Prescotts from the news, vehemently opposed the union and called off the wedding. They couldn't stomach the idea of being connected to such a deceitful and morally bankrupt family. Her dream of marrying into high society was shattered, leaving only humiliation and despair. Mr. Prescott fell apart completely. He dared not leave his house or face anyone. His small company, already struggling, was now on the brink of bankruptcy as partners severed ties and bank loans came due. The suburban home they lived in was foreclosed on by the bank. From a family that considered themselves elite, they became homeless. But the most tragic fate belonged to Michael. He lost everything in one night. He became a social pariah, a marriage scammer, a disloyal son, and a cheating husband. The company where he worked, under public pressure, was forced to fire him. No other firm would touch him. The $5 million settlement he had so gleefully accepted now became the source of his problems. Jessica, his mistress, realizing the S, Michael was not just leaking but had already sunk, abandoned ship without a second thought. She disappeared with a large chunk of the money he had given her, leaving him with nothing but a mess and empty promises. He tried to contact her in vain, only to receive a cold text. "Don't bother me again. There's no future for us." He had lost his wife, his fortune, his honor, and now his mistress. He turned to alcohol. He was often seen in dive bars, perpetually drunk, cursing his fate, cursing society, and most of all, cursing me for being so cruel. He never once realized that his own greed, entitlement, and betrayal were the fatal daggers he had plunged into his own life. A week after the party, as I was finalizing the handover paperwork at the mansion with the lawyers and the charity, Michael suddenly appeared. He was so disheveled he was almost unrecognizable, unshaven, clothes wrinkled, reeking of alcohol. He rushed in, all pretense of dignity gone, and collapsed at my feet, sobbing and begging. "Ellie, I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I'm a monster, an animal. Please, forgive me. Just one more time. We can start over. I promise I'll be good to you. I'll be your slave. Please, take back the donation. We can still be a family." I looked at him, the man I once loved with all my heart. He looked pathetic, pitiful, but also contemptible. I felt nothing. No pity, no satisfaction, just a hollow emptiness and disgust. "Michael," I said, my voice calm and cold. "It was over between us. The night you and your mother plotted how to throw me out of my own house. Your mistake wasn't falling in love with someone else. Your mistake was that you didn't just lie. You conspired to harm, to steal from, and to trample on the person who stood by you through everything. You didn't just betray love. You sold your own soul. You don't deserve anyone's forgiveness. Not even your own." I turned to the security guards, my voice unwavering. "Please escort him out. As of today, this place, and my life, are no longer open to him." Michael was dragged out, still screaming my name, still apologizing, still cursing, but it was all too late. The heavy iron gates of the mansion slowly swung shut, like a final curtain falling on a tragic play, closing the door on 10 years of my life, on a past filled with pain and deceit. I stood alone in the vast garden, which just a week ago had been a glittering stage. Now, it had returned to its natural tranquility. A few late-season roses were still in bloom, their gentle fragrance drifting on the evening breeze. I took a deep breath of the fresh air and felt a true sense of liberation. I hadn't lost everything. On the contrary, I had found myself. Their downfall didn't bring me joy, but it brought me justice. I had escaped a gilded cage, escaped toxic people. A new life was waiting for me. A life I would decide, I would build. A life free of schemes, filled only with peace and purpose. I looked up at the clear blue sky, without a single cloud. I knew that from this day forward, I would never again cry over any man. Months later, when the noise of the divorce had completely faded, and the name Prescott was just a cautionary tale people sometimes told, my life turned a new page, one of peace, clarity, and light. The waterfront mansion now had a new name, the Horizon House. A bronze plaque was mounted proudly at the entrance, under the dedicated management of the Hope and Horizons Trust. It had truly become a home for over 100 orphaned and vulnerable children. The once luxurious bedrooms were converted into clean, cozy dormitories. The vast living room became a library and common area. The garden was transformed into a playground with slides and swings. The sound of innocent laughter and play filled every corner, washing away the cold, artificial atmosphere of the past. Occasionally, on weekends, I would visit. I didn't come as a benefactor or a distant donor. I came as a big sister, a friend, a member of their new family. I brought books and snacks, read stories with them, played games, and helped them with their art projects. I listened to their stories, their naive dreams, their quiet sorrows. Looking into their clear eyes and their bright, guileless smiles, I felt a pure happiness, a sense of fulfillment that I had never known before. Even when I lived in the lap of luxury, I realized the true value of wealth isn't in the number of zeros in an account, but in how many smiles, how much hope, and how many transformed lives it can create. I no longer lived in the mansion. I treated myself to a small, charming penthouse apartment in the city center. It wasn't large, but it had a spacious terrace where I grew pots of roses and orchids with a panoramic view of the sparkling city at night. I lived alone, but I never felt lonely. I rediscovered joy in simple things. I invested time in myself, learning new skills I never had time for in the whirlwind of work and family. I signed up for an oil painting class, picked up the piano I had abandoned as a girl, and began taking solo trips to new and exciting places. I returned to work, but with a completely different mindset. The pressure to make more money, to prove myself, was gone. I founded a small investment and risk management consultancy with a singular mission: to support female entrepreneurs. I wanted to use my experience, my knowledge, and even my painful stumbles to help other women, so they could walk their own career paths with confidence, know how to protect the fruits of their labor, and never have to depend on anyone. My firm didn't just offer financial advice. It connected them with top lawyers and psychologists, creating a strong support network. As for my former in-laws, I no longer sought news of them. All debts had been settled by the law, and I wanted to let the past rest. I only heard whispers from friends that after selling everything they had left to pay off debts and my settlement, they had to move to a remote rural area to live with distant relatives. Michael, after hitting rock bottom, had to take a job as a laborer in an industrial park to get by. Their life of luxury, their false prestige, their conniving schemes all had crumbled, leaving only a harsh reality and the contempt of the world. I felt no satisfaction. I only felt that the law of cause and effect never misses its mark, and the price for greed and betrayal is always steep. One autumn afternoon, as I was sitting on my terrace sipping tea and watching the sunset, my mother came to visit. She brought a bouquet of pure white orchids, my favorite. She sat beside me, and we watched the beautiful scene in comfortable silence, the only sounds, the gentle breeze, and the classical music drifting from inside. "You've finally found real peace, haven't you?" my mother asked softly. I nodded and smiled. A smile of deep, genuine contentment. "Yes, Mom, I have. A peace that doesn't depend on anyone else. A peace that comes from within. I'm so proud of you." My mother took my hand, her eyes warm. "You didn't just get back up after falling. You turned your pain into strength, your loss into something meaningful for the world. You have lived a life more brilliant and valuable than I could have ever hoped for." I leaned my head on my mother's shoulder, feeling an absolute sense of stability and peace. 10 years of marriage had taken many things from me: time, love, trust, but it had also taught me an invaluable lesson. It helped me understand the value of character, the power of independence, and above all, the unconditional love and infinite wisdom of a mother. My life had weathered a great storm, one that threatened to drown everything. But after the storm, the sky was not just clear again. A brilliant rainbow had appeared. I had lost a fake family, but I had found myself and a higher purpose. From my terrace, I could just make out the Horizon House in the distance. The sound of children's laughter floated on the wind. I knew my decision was the right one. To give is not to lose, but to receive in a more complete way. I was no longer Eleanor Vance, the entrepreneur with a $15 million fortune. I was simply Ellie, a woman who found happiness in giving, joy in simplicity, and freedom in her own soul. And that was the most precious, most enduring asset of all. One that no person, no conspiracy could ever take away. The story of Eleanor is not just a drama of family conflict, but a profound lesson on the limits of tolerance, the value of self-respect, and the cleansing power of pain. Through her journey from a submissive wife to a woman who dared to stand up for herself and ultimately find healing after tragedy, we can draw deep insights. Endless patience can be poison to the soul. Eleanor spent years enduring disrespect. She mistakenly believed that silence was the glue that held her family together, but in reality, it only fed the selfishness and cruelty of her in-laws. The lesson is that harmony cannot exist where dignity is trampled. We must learn to speak up when the boundaries of respect are crossed. Financial independence is the foundation of a personal voice. It was Eleanor's hard work and success, allowing her to purchase her home with her own money, that gave her the ultimate power to control her own destiny when she was pushed to the brink. A woman truly has a voice only when she is not dependent on anyone else. The complexity of the human heart and the origins of cruelty. Eleanor's mother-in-law initially appeared as a one-dimensional villain. However, a deeper look might reveal past insecurities or failures that twisted her perspective, reminding us that people are rarely born evil. Sometimes, unhealed wounds transform them. This calls for a more compassionate view, even while not condoning their wrongdoing. Healing from the deepest tragedies. Losing her marriage and the life she knew was an irreplaceable pain. But in that devastating loss, the walls of arrogance and selfishness crumbled. The repentance of her in-laws and the growth of Eleanor show that people can always change for the better if they dare to face their mistakes. Ultimately, a peaceful family is not found in a grand house, but in mutual understanding and appreciation. Thank you for listening.